I guess I get the moderation duties. So let's start. We'll go down and introduce ourselves, whatever we want to say. You can explain why Rachel Kelly has a beard.
Yeah.
My name is Blake Casselman. I'm a film producer and screenwriter and comic book writer. And if you talk to my kids, I'm often the villain of their story.
I'm Brad Kelly. Rachel is very sick, and so since I play Rachel on the internet 365 days a year, I will play her in real life for LTUE. So Rachel wrote the Color World series. It's a realistic superhero story. So think like Heroes, the television show, and so there's definitely villains. I've got a really great line that Rachel texted me to prepare for this that I will share before the day is out.
I'm Andrew Bahlmann. I wrote the book on the mythology of the superhero. That's the title, so it's easy to find. It releases April 20th. It's not a fiction book. It's kind of an academic approach. I also am the chair for the Right Here and Ephraim panel, or the Right Here and Ephraim conference, which is down in Poduntville, Utah. But it's a very good conference. Yeah, so I'm going to flip the questions that they sent us because I want to start with that last question. Who's your favorite superhero? Or sorry, just got done with superheroes. I have to change tacks. Who's your favorite villain and why?
Well, I have a list, a big list of favorite villains. I like villains who are like a force of nature, and they're villains because of kind of who they are, and not as much that they've come up with this dastardly scheme and they're cackling to themselves as they twirl their mustache. I like the movie Duel, the truck driver. You know, you never see his face. All you see is his silhouette inside the cab. You see his arm at one point. You see his cowboy boots and he's walking. But he is so intimidating, especially how he uses that truck. I also like the hunter in Bambi.
Wow.
Think about it.
That's cold.
He does one of the most, in cinematic history, he does one of the most terrible things ever done on film. What is it? He kills Bambi's mother. He and his drunken buddies are probably also the ones who kept the campfire burning and burned down the forest too. So, and then another one, in more recent film, in The Revenant, the bear that attacks Leonardo DiCaprio's. The bear is what it is. It's protecting its cubs, and that bear attack scene is one of the most frightening things I've ever seen on film before.
So I have a really hard time with villains personally when we play Injustice as a family. So I prefer the one on the handheld, right on the phone, because you get 3 characters instead of 1 to fight with. So the most I will let myself is Black Adam, and I researched and researched and researched, because the beauty of the comic book world is you can usually find a universe in which the bad guys that you like were good at some point, right? And so I found like a storyline in which Black Adam is not terribly evil, and so therefore I justify being able to use him. And other than that, like, I'm always asking my kids, like, did you use my villains? They're not marked as new anymore. That must mean that one of you is using my villains. And so the other one I would say that, oh man, it just left me.
That one guy.
There was that one guy. So if I think about it, I'll come back to it. But you know, the line that Rachel had said to me before was that as she writes, she really wants you to question whether or not someone's evil. She wants you to have such a hard time drawing that dividing line between good and bad, that's what makes a villain. And what's been great about modern villainy is we're getting the backstory to Harley Quinn, to Joker. Has anyone watched Gotham? No one? Okay, the 3 people in the room that watch Gotham. You should, if you're going to attend this panel, you need to go immediately out and Netflix all of season 1. It is literally a show of how every villain that you've ever known in the Batverse became who they are. And I had to force myself to watch 4 episodes or so, but now it's unbelievable It's really well done television, and if you're a villain person, there is no better way to watch them all become who they are.
That's an interesting show. You kind of hit on something that was there was an earlier panel called the charismatic villains, and you talked about that. They talked a lot about that idea that you want to understand the villains now. I'll say my favorite villain is the Joker, and of all the versions, I love Heath Ledger's the Joker. I was one of those naysayers when I first heard about the casting, and I was wrong. But man, Mark Hamill, especially in the Arkham games. But I mean, this conversation leads me to ask what makes a villain? Because I mean, you're talking about the Bear and the Revenant,
Right?
And I think most of us would say that's not a villain. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about what it is that makes a character or a creature a villain as opposed to, something that just happens.
Well, a villain can be, or an antagonist can be someone who is part of the central conflict in the sense they're opposing, they're in opposition to the protagonist and him achieving his goals. Mm-hmm. And so if you look at the Bear and the Revenant, it's very much in opposition to the protagonist that was Leonardo DiCaprio. The Jaws and Shark, or the Shark. I'm sorry. It must be third day of LTUE.
Right.
But the Shark and Jaws, again, it's not evil. It is what it is, but it's very much the antagonist to the protagonist of the film, mm-hmm. and it's the thing in the way of the protagonist's goals. So a villain can be someone who is going to achieve their goals or to do what they feel is the right thing to do, because a good villain is the hero of their own story, correct?
Yeah.
That's the oft-told tale.
Yeah, and so in opposition to the protagonist or the one driving the central conflict, the villain, whether it's part of who they are or whether they're doing it on purpose, that's the role they're fulfilling, and that's right. And they're part of the stakes being raised, and they're part of the audience, the suspense of the audience worrying about whether or not the hero will be able to achieve that goal.
Okay.
So Dr. Doofenshmirtz was the villain that I couldn't think of that I loved.
Excellent choice.
And at no point am I ever worried that Harry's life is in danger. Right?
I'm Dr. Okay, what show is this?
This is
Phineas and Ferb.
Phineas and Ferb. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Phineas and Ferb illiterate. But.
That is one of the best things that Disney has made in the last
ever. Yeah.
Okay.
Decade,
Yeah.
20 years, whatever.
No doubt.
I'll put it
including
on
the films.
I'll put it on the
and
list.
So just take anything that could do something evil and add a nator on the end of it,
and some things that can't do evil.
Right.
But he's made them evil.
Into an innator. So I love that, and I guess for me, I feel comfortable saying that I like that evil guy because he's just so bad at being evil that he moves the story forward. And I think what makes a villain. So in this conversation that we had with Rachel on her deathbed, texting me what she would say if she was here, it's the line. And Superman and Batman are both, and most heroes, right? Up until we get Blackest Night and Green Lantern, there's a very clear line. There's those that will take a life, and there's those that won't. And it squarely puts you on one side or the other. And then we got Injustice, in which the Joker kills Lois Lane, right. And Superman says, "F.O. dear, I have allowed this madman to persist for so long that now innocent people are senselessly dying because I wasn't man enough to kill this guy," and goes out and, right? And so now we have a totally different Superman. No one likes nice Superman anymore. We go to a Comic-Con every week with our book series, and we have this really cool, like, Boy Scout looking Superman with bullets bouncing off of him, and it says ding 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 ding. And then we have the Injustice Superman with the red eyes as if he's about to heat you up and melt you, and everybody buys Injustice Superman over.
Right.
Right?
Well, and I mean, there was a whole panel on this, but that's one of the fascinating things. We kind of dig a good supervillain. And another story that takes that Superman question and puts it in another direction is Red Son,
yeah.
Where he crash lands in Cold War era Russia instead of the United States. I'm not loud enough. Okay. And so all of a sudden we have this guy who espouses the concepts of a different culture, and he reads like a villain. As you're going through that story, he feels like the villain of the piece in a lot of ways, even though he is completely motivated by good. And I think that's one thing that we expect now from villains. And again, they talked about this earlier in the day, and they did a really good job of talking about it. We expect to understand a little bit our villains now in a way that we didn't in the past.
So we talk a lot. Through the first 4 books, I have read the Color World series purely as a fan. I started out as like a supportive husband, because that's what you should do when your wife does something like write a book series. But then I lost my job a couple times, and so I was like, well, I have time on my hand, and I haven't read my wife's book series, so I should do that. And at the 2nd book, I was so convinced that she knew what she was doing. I sold the house and everything in it, and we moved our family of 6 into an RV for 2 years to drive around America and tell all of you guys about Color World. And so this idea of, what do you do with the villain, they really, their entire purpose moves the story forward. And we would all be hard pressed to say that we're not who we are in our life without those things that have punched us in the face, whether it was life, whether it was a particular person. You can almost pinpoint the moments in your life in which you felt like someone and or the universe was after you. And it's, as we look at our favorite stories on film, in the comic books, like during Blackest Night, right? Sinestro becomes such a threat that Hal Jordan goes and says, we got to remove the restriction on the ring that says we can't kill anyone. That's a big deal in the Green Lantern universe, that Green Lanterns are going to kill people. And so Rachel and I are constantly, she's the person that says, there's a story in the Book of Mormon. We're in Utah, right? So I can say that. So there's a story in the Book of Mormon about anti-Nephi Lehis, and their way to combat evil is to kneel down and to pray, and they lose like a couple thousand before the villains in the story stop killing people and go, oh my God, we have senselessly slaughtered people who had absolutely no intention of fighting against us. And so that's the one cause. And then you have some guy like Captain Moroni who says, no, I'm going to rip off my shirt, I'm going to write some words, right, and I'm going to fly this thing fly above my head, and gosh darn it, we're going to raise an army and we're going to go get those guys. And so we constantly have this conversation back and forth about what's an appropriate, like, how do you fight villainy? And there's so many people that are Joker people. It's almost painful every time someone says, I'll take the Joker bookmark. But you sure don't want the Batman bookmark? Come on. Yeah. So
and we've seen the rise of the anti-hero very much in popular culture.
Yes.
Deadpool.
And probably even, Deadpool is a great example. I would say from the Batman universe, probably Harley Quinn is another example of someone
who they've made into an anti-hero.
She's an anti-hero, and
she started out as a villain.
Started out as a villain, but now she has this huge fandom.
And so did Deadpool. Deadpool originally was a villain. Yeah. His first appearance, he was trying to kill, I think it was X-Force or X-Pac, one of the not X-Men X teams.
Yeah.
He was trying to kill him, and he did just a terrible job. And that was his first appearance, and that's all he was. And then somewhere along the line, they said, you know what, this guy's interesting. I don't know why they said that, because he wasn't.
What? Well, in 2000, they did Cable Deadpool, in which so Cable led X-Force, and so they're like, what better way to stop him from killing them all than to just team them up and let the guy with the big gun and the guy with the big sword go out and kill other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then even the Heath Ledger performance of the Joker in The Dark Knight kind of put the Joker from the status as a homicidal killer who happened to be Batman's main nemesis to a near, if not complete, anti-heroes.
Have you read the write-up in... So are you guys familiar with the alternate way to read that movie with the Heath Ledger Joker? There's a really... Okay, so you're yes. So...
he's the hero.
Right? So cleans up Gotham. All of organized crime is completely destroyed under the Joker's reign. And their money is all burned in front of them. Right?
The bad guys, not the good guys. The bad guys. Their money is burned.
Organized crime
right.
is burned by the Joker.
Which is worth pointing out, right?
Well, not only that, but he salutes Commissioner Gordon as the one and only legitimate, honest police officer in Gotham. He gives him a standing ovation. He goes after all the bad and crooked cops in Gotham, right? He puts the vigilante, the masked vigilante known as the Batman, in check. I mean, you run down the list and you think, well, my gosh, what have we done?
And you can do magic tricks.
Well, that's one of the fascinating. That's why I chose the Joker, because the Joker, if you go through the entire history of his existence, at one point he actually summoned a devil to go after Batman. Now, it wasn't the greatest storyline for the Joker, but it's there. He has been evil in every way that is possible over the course of his stories. But yeah, he's crazy likable, and he shouldn't be. I mean, I like your response. And honestly, if we look at Deadpool, he shouldn't be likable either.
Oh well, that's so. I appreciate the rise of the anti-hero. Thank heavens. So now I can play Black Adam and Injustice. But the anti-hero, right, is someone who says that traditionally there have been certain lines that separate heroes and villains, and I understand that in 2016 I'm going to need to cross some of those lines for the greater good. And so we have the rise of Solomon Grundy, Black Adam, Harley Quinn, folks like that. But to me, there still seems to be those three categories. So Batman and Superman, at least the traditional two, refuse to kill anyone. The anti-hero is willing to do some ugly things in the name of good. And then the villain is willing to do whatever it takes to push their agenda forward. And that's a really dirty way to divvy those things up.
Well, and another movie coming out in 2016 is The Suicide Squad, which is a bunch of villains who are going to be the protagonists of the movie. Again, the anti-hero.
Right. Well, I don't know if they're anti-heroes so much as they're forced into doing what they have to.
Sure.
And so that creates a new kind of conversation because they're bad guys. And I mean, there's one scene in the most recent trailer where Harley Quinn breaks a window and steals a purse. And I can't remember his name, the guy who's in charge of them, looks back at her with this confused look on his face. He's like, what? We're bad guys. This is what we do. Yeah. Come on. And so they're not even trying to do good. They're trying to get out of the situation.
But they are going to be the heroes of the story.
They're going to be the protagonists, yeah. And yeah, we're going to read them as the heroes, which is really bizarre.
Well, because Will Smith is there, and I say that right, tongue in cheek, but it's true.
It's true.
I think they cast him so that they could feel okay putting 5 or 6 bad people in a team to go save the world. I honestly think that's why Will Smith is Deadshot.
And why is Harley Quinn part of the movie? She wasn't part of the original Suicide Squad, correct?
Well, because she's the
she
hottest
was the new
thing
52.
in comics.
She was in the new 52.
So,
but here's
she's marketing them.
But here's someone with a big following.
Yeah.
Yes.
That probably wouldn't be in the movie otherwise.
Absolutely not. Yeah. So the real villains are the marketing departments, right? Those people that are only out there to sell us things, even if it means that we like the Joker.
Right. Well, and there's another. My dad had this conversation with me early on, and this was before a lot of this came down. Ocean's 11. We're rooting for the villains.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, sure. And Andy. Oh gosh, what's his name?
Andy Garcia.
Andy Garcia. Andy Garcia is not a great guy, but he is a law-abiding citizen
Right.
who's running a business.
Who's getting robbed
Who's getting robbed.
by a bunch
And
of
we're
really good-looking men.
and we just say, yay.
And one good-looking woman.
Yeah.
Right? Sort of.
She kind of comes in on the tail end of the heist, but yeah. So I want to, really quick, on this list of questions, they mentioned Despicable Me. So I think let's talk about Despicable Me for a minute, and then I think we'll open it up for questions and go from there. So, Despicable Me. Again, we've got a bad guy.
Megamind.
And Megamind, yeah, that's also on the list.
Yes!
And that's a fascinating story because it's that one, Megamind, the opening credits for that really set up some really fascinating things. If it hadn't been for that jerk, Metro Man, Megamind would have been the hero.
Yeah.
Because Metro Man bumps him off track.
Yep.
And so, I don't know, what's your take on this fascination with these guys? Megamind and Despicable Me, we now have a spin-off movie from a villain
The
movie.
Minions. Yeah.
Well, and in a non-cartoon way, we could even go back a little further to Dr. Horrible.
Yeah.
Because he's a villain, but he's the hero of the story, and who's the real villain?
And
the good guy.
Right, and Doofenshmirtz fits here too.
Yeah.
Although we can stick with ones that everybody knows.
So for me, I think for too long, at least in America, and I can't say outside of America because I don't live there, but it's been too easy to draw the lines, and it gets society, it gets humanity nowhere, absolutely nowhere, to say this person's right and this person's wrong, this person's evil and this person's good. It has literally, we are in 2016 and we have not solved any of the problems, right? Like Rachel loves Superman and hates Batman because in Gotham it never gets any better. It never. It's 2016. The Joker's still running around. The Riddler's still running around. We got, how many women are we up to now in a bodysuit, halfway zipped, right? They're all still out there. We have solved no problems. And as long as we force people to say that this side is good and this side is bad, this side is red and this side is blue, this side is conservative and this side is liberal, we are now calling people liberal and conservative as pejorative insults.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It used to be how you tried to figure out how to vote. Now it's an insult. Oh, you're a conservative. Like, we're talking about each other in these terms. And the greatest thing about the rise of the villain and the anti-villain is we have got to stop saying you're good and you're bad. And I think some smart people are using fiction to teach the rest of us that it is not as clear-cut as you are good and you are bad.
I think, you know, going back to Despicable Me and why that character is, what's his name? Steve Carell. Gru.
Oh.
Steve Carell keeps coming to my mind, but the reason why that character works so well and why some of these other villains are looked upon or take the anti-hero role is even though they do things that are bad, they do things that hurt other people, but they are still people. They still have passions, they still have interests. I mean, Gru is obviously lonely, right? Because these children come into his life, they fulfill a piece of his life where there was something missing. And you could almost say that villains put on their pants the same way that the good guys do.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting to me, to take this character who, you know, and Tracy Hickman, I attended a panel he was on years ago at LTUE. He said something I'll never forget. He said, a hero does what he or she thinks is right and worries or wonders about the possible implications of their actions, while a villain does what he or she thinks is right and doesn't worry about the possible implications of their actions. And that's such a fine line to me, is that you have two people motivated by similar things, that all it is it's a little bit of a mindset shift, an attitude shift that is separating these two people. And when you look at it that way, humans and villains, or good guys and villains who are human, probably have a lot more in common when they're both presented as three-dimensional characters.
Right. I liked what you said about this idea that, you know, we used to be right and wrong. I teach medieval literature, and whenever I teach Beowulf, one of the first things that I get from my students is, why does Grendel do what he does? And I have to explain to them, at that point, that wasn't a question that they asked. Grendel is bad, he deserves to get his arm ripped off. The end. And that just doesn't work for us anymore.
It doesn't. And I don't think it should. I think when you take a look at Gotham, and you know, you mentioned the implications. They are all carefully calculating what is going to happen when they do X, Y, Z. And we have.
But they don't worry about it.
I'd have to sit down and watch an episode or two specifically thinking about that. Because Penguin is very intentional, and it is impressive the kind of things that Penguin pulls off, right? And whatever situation he's in, I think this is the end of this guy. He is like, I'm thinking he has to exist in the Batverse because he doesn't look like the Penguin that I know as a villain, and so that must mean he continues to live. But there are.
No, they did that one guy.
Oh, did they off somebody that? Are you season 2?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not on Netflix.
That's why I said that one guy.
Okay, thank you. It's so great when someone saves it from ruining it for you. To me, and I'd like to think it's intentional because I'm the guy that looks for the best in everything. I think it's an intentional shift to see people as villains putting on their pants or skirts the same way that we do, and that it's ridiculous in 2006. We, as a human species, we have got to think. We have got to stop boxing everything. It's fun to have categories. I like Magic the Gathering. I recognize that other people like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! We're different. You're not wrong. I'm not right. We're just different. And so when I feel like these villains, they have an agenda. And it is their means by which they're willing to go to do those things. But there are questionable things that look really good if they had a different right-hand man or woman, if they had a different person that was next to them, if their peer group was different, if the block they grew up on was different. If you read a lot of Malcolm Gladwell, he's a social scientist. And Steve Jobs lived down the street from one of the first supercomputers. And you could pay for time to go and basically toy with this supercomputer. Sorry, Bill Gates. Well, big surprise, he ends up becoming, the guy that founds Microsoft. He was born into that situation. There was absolutely nothing special Bill Gates did other than live down the street from. So when we take a look at people in 2016, it's really easy to say, Michael Vick's a douchebag. The guy killed a lot of dogs in a really terrible way. He should go XYZ for XYZ years. But then you look at Michael Vick when he comes back. The Philadelphia Eagles take a huge chance putting that guy back on the field. Talk about a PR nightmare. This is like the face against all
the face
cute
of
things.
animal abuse.
Yeah. The face. Like they replaced Michael Vick's face with the most evil person that hurt animals. And he came back. He played in the NFL, right? You earn a lot in that job. And he is a different person. He works with the SPCA now. He was in jail, in prison, right? I mean, you and I think about, well, he was out of sight, out of mind. The guy went and served in prison with folks that raped and killed and murdered and stole and ran drug rings and then came back in, right? And the guy played professional football. So in 2016, I really think that if we don't consider who we are because of the people that oppose us, then we have done a disservice to both of us. And it's when you think about Lucifer, is he the only Lucifer? Is he playing a role, a particular role? Was he asked to do it? Was he told to do it? Did he do it for this? Did he do it for that? Does the plan move forward? Think about what the story looks like, both as a writer and as a human being. What does the story look like if everybody just agrees?
Circling back to Batman, one of my all-time favorite Batman stories was written back in the 80s, but it's called The Killing Joke.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Which includes the origin story of the Joker. And it's always resonated with me that the Joker was, before he became the Joker, he had a pregnant wife, and he wanted to be a stand-up comic, and he had failed at so many different things he had tried in his life, and they were living in poverty, and he had a baby on the way, so he gets involved with organized crime. It's situations that lead him to be in the position where he becomes the Joker, and it's through an accident. They touched. They took that part of that origin story and put it in the Tim Burton Batman film with Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton. But had the Joker's life before he became the Joker not gone down that path, and if he had been more successful at what he aspired to do, he wouldn't have been in that position to become the Joker. So it just fascinates me that, yeah, we've all tried to do different things. We've all, we have a lot of aspiring writers at this conference. How many aspiring writers are working toward getting on this side of the table to be part of a panel? For years, I sat where you people sat, and I struggled at getting where I am now in films and comic book writing, and had my life gone differently, I may not be here.
Well, that's the whole point behind The Killing Joke, is the Joker's trying to prove that one bad day can send you over the deep end. And that's why he does that to Commissioner Gordon. He does this it's horrific what he does. to Gordon and his family in there just to try to prove that Gordon will break. And Gordon manages to not to because he's the hero. But yeah, and that's one of the things that I wanted to point out is I think in a lot of ways when you have a really good villain, the reason it's a good villain is because it's a mirror for the hero. And the Joker is the Joker is like the negative of Batman, and I think that's part of why he's so successful. And Batman's Rogues Gallery is a really good example of that. Two-Face is a mirror to Batman in a lot of ways. And so we have all these, and that's something I wanted to bring up. Are you guys ready for questions? You want to comment on that?
I would just really quickly, I would say Heroes of New York, Heroes of New York? People of New York? What am I? Humans of New York, thank you. Is in the middle of 2 or 3 weeks at New York State Penitentiary. And they are talking with folks very openly and honestly. That's part of the beauty of Humans in New York. And if you want inspiration for your story, but if you want inspiration as a human being, we're literally a day or a decision away from a very different life.
Well, one of those stories, I don't know if it was a Humans of New York story, but there was a guy who killed someone, and he said what he did it because this man was a pedophile. And the court system failed to convict him, and he said, my life is worth nothing, but this child that he molested now has a chance at a more normal life because I killed him. And he knew what he did was wrong, but he's completely convinced that what he did was more right than to not do anything. He said his life was worthless. This child now has a better life because this person no longer exists.
And then there was a Mormon message, again, we're in Utah, I hope it's okay to talk about that stuff. There was a Mormon message several years ago about a father whose wife and all the girls in the family were killed. And the kid wanted nothing more than to die. And in prison, the father would come and talk with the kid who killed his wife and kids. I mean,
was that movie Letting Go?
It was turned into a movie, but honestly, the video of the man talking about his experience has got to be more powerful than any 2-hour movie could be.
Right.
And so again, when we think about the idea of a villain, we are one day, one decision, one thing, one 5-minute increment from being a completely different person. And I think it's not that once you go down a path that's your path, right? The idea is what's great about humanity, or that there's an idea in every major religion, there's an idea of salvation. In every major religion, there is an idea of salvation. That at some point, you can go the other way.
Like Michael Vick, which you brought in.
Yeah.
All right. You guys have any questions you want to throw at us? Yeah.
I guess the question is, what do you guys think? Dolores Umbridge versus, but I want to say versus Voldemort. To me, I read 7 books, and I hated Voldemort. But boy, when Umbridge came along, I would have had dinner with Voldemort any day of the week. So what do you think it is? What do you think it is about her?
There's a wonderful conversation that keeps making the rounds on Facebook and Pinterest and stuff like that. We know her. She's that mean teacher from 3rd grade that treated us like garbage. Now, of course, she's been exaggerated. Voldemort's, I don't get Voldemort. He's a dude without a nose. Yeah. But Umbridge, I know who she is. I have spent time with her. Yeah. And
she's also a cat lover, which
you don't know
adds to her evilness in my opinion. People will disagree with me, I'm sure.
Yeah, Umbridge is Hitler. It's 100%. And I went through and I started looking at what they were doing in that Harry Potter movie. I'm a visual guy. I apologize. That's why Rachel handles the book series, and I'm going to handle the comic book and the movie. Umbridge is unbelievable, and we've seen Hitler before.
And Hitler was motivated by good intentions. He wanted to save his people.
Yeah.
The way he went about it was not so great.
Kind of questionable.
But Hitler was a failed artist.
Yes, he was.
Had Hitler achieved his dreams and his goals as an artist, would he still have been in the position he was in?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, again, that divergence of life.
Did you have it?
Yeah, the villain can be a single person, and it's easy to hit that single goal for that
Right.
villain. But what about the villain of society or the government? How do you deal with that?
Do you do Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at all?
Do I what?
Or do you watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at all?
No.
So
It does deal with this question a little bit.
So if you get a chance, watch, and it's fine to watch things, purely for academic reasons. Watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because at some point, Hydra is everywhere, and all of a sudden everyone's okay with it. I am going to Comic-Cons, and people are coming up to me like, "Do you have anything Hydra?"
Hydra.
Right? I need
Hydra.
I need a Hydra logo in this art style. And
I have a Hydra belt buckle.
Okay, so, right, so what it is we're seeing it in modern day politics. People believe that the world should look in a certain way, shape, or form. The good people of the earth are not enough to get that done, so more is needed. And that's when you get groups like Hydra that have an opportunity. That's when after World War I, Germany, they beat up Germany so bad after World War I that only Hitler could save Germany at that point. And it was unbelievable, the state that the Allies had put Germany in after World War I. And so it took somebody that said, "I'm willing to go the extra mile." The people were like, "It's got to be better than this because we're all starving to death right now."
Right.
So situations like that create opportunities for entire systems to be toppled, for entire worldviews to look very different.
Season 2 of Agent Carter is really interesting because they're starting to get into the origin of Hydra as well.
That show should be on your to-watch list. The end. But dealing, I want to comment on this question of a civilization as villain. Dolores Umbridge would not have been the person she was without the Ministry of Magic bagging her. I still think we need faces. I mean, the Third Reich was not just Hitler. He couldn't have done it by himself, but he was the face.
Yeah.
And I think for us as viewers, when it comes to our fiction, we still need a face. We still need, and even in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.,
Someone to hate.
we have at various faces at various stages of the show, someone becomes the face of Hydra.
Right now it's Ward, the former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent.
So and there's like a V, that gentleman, and then
Well, in talking about anti-heroes, how you turn characters like, say, from a newspaper like Calvin and Hobbes to like general sidekicks like Iago.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
What characters from newspaper comics like Calvin and Hobbes count as anti-heroes?
Well, I mean, they probably, Calvin does himself, doesn't he, right? It's my understanding that Calvin is kind of a my way or the highway kind of guy.
Calvin's the hero and the villain of the comic strip. That's how I've looked at it.
But I mean, the challenge with that is and I think this is one of the challenges when you're looking at something like that that's serialized. It's hard to have that because you don't have you don't have the build and resolution of a conflict. And I mean, you do, like within a series like Color World, which I do need to read now. I'm sure each individual book, correct me if I'm wrong, has a rise of conflict and a resolution of conflict within the book.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's a setup for the next one.
Right.
But there's a rise in resolution. There's a rise in resolution. And if you don't have a narrative that follows that structure, which is the case with Calvin and Hobbes, it's really hard to say, this is the protagonist, this is the antagonist, this is where it builds, and this is where it resolves.
By the way, has anyone ever seen the Calvin and Hobbes style comics they have out now? That's Kylo Ren. Those are so fantastic. If you haven't seen them, search them out.
There's a red shirt with glasses. Yeah.
My question was just going to be, why do you think that in a lot of literature and other mediums we have villains such as, like we were talking about, the anti-heroes that you kind of love to hate. But at the same time, also you see a lot of kind of the force of nature style villains. Moby Dick, Doomsday, guys like that that are just these towering monoliths of unstoppable force. Why do you think that scares us so much at the same time?
Well, I wanna argue that there's a difference between an anti-hero and a villain that we love. The Joker is not a hero in any stretch. You know, we just like him.
Okay.
And I think there's a difference between that and Deadpool. And I think Deadpool's one of those guys who sometimes does good by accident, but he still manages to do good. The Force.
When he ultimately wants to be a legitimate Avenger like Spider-Man.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
He wants to be good. He's just really bad at it. And so there's a difference, I think. The force of nature, I don't know.
The force of nature is so frightening to people because we're helpless against it.
Yeah.
It's the reason why us older people will recall that when the movie Jaws came out and all these people went and saw it and all these people were terrified by the shark in it, what happened as far as beaches?
Yeah.
People stopped going in the water because that movie, even though it embellished how big great whites usually get, and it embellished how a shark, how much havoc a single shark can wreak on a community like the one in the book and in the movie. We know that sharks are out there, and we know that sharks are these eating machines, and so that made that force of nature very, very real for a lot of people.
And we've spent decades listening to scientists say they're really not that bad. We don't buy it.
Yeah, I think the problem of someone like Doomsday, right? So who kills Superman, at least at one story arc, is that there's no answer to it, and then it stops humanity. And for us to continue to move forward and not be paralyzed, we have to feel like there's a resolution. And when something is that much of a force of nature, yeah, like how do you stop that? And I mean, I'm always kind of, when I watch the Transformers movie, the last one, I'm just gonna excommunicate the last Transformers movie from the canon.
Just the last one?
Really?
Oh.
Okay. So, but you think about, yeah, you think about like, or oh man, I just watched another. It had to be Independence Day. Like, really? I mean, it's a good thing they figured out a way. Because short of that, like, how do you stop something? And there's another movie, isn't there? That's like very current, in which there's like 3 stages. And it's like stage 1, like things start happening. Stage 2.
The fifth wave.
Okay, fifth
Fifth
wave.
wave, yeah.
So I won't watch stuff like that because I don't know what the answer is, and I like to feel like if I needed to, I could jump in there and save the day. And one person, I mean, it would take all of humanity. So then there was a question in the back, and then we'll start the triangle back. Right? No? Back row? Somebody had a hand up. Oh, okay. All right.
So how would you articulate the difference then between a character like Han Solo? I've always considered him an anti-hero. He's a hero, but he's kind of an anti-hero.
He's
and
very
then
reluctant.
That's fair.
He's very, for money, he's a hero.
Yeah, but he's kind of mercenary. And then you've got, and then Deadpool. But I feel like there is still a distinction between those two characters. So would you not call Han Solo an anti-hero?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he is.
So
He's
then
definitely
how would
fine.
you-
He starts out more as an anti-hero, and then he becomes, because of the influence, I think, of Luke and Leia on his life, he becomes less like that.
Well, I think actually that oft-repeated debate, we got 5 minutes, that oft-repeated debate, did Han shoot first? An anti-hero shoots first.
Yeah.
And right when we had thought that Han's reformed, we open up the new movie, and what's he doing? He's back to doing stuff for money, so so that we don't forget that that's who Han Solo is.
What do you think of like redeemed villains? Are they in like a different like sort of category? Does that make them better, or does that make them worse as far as villains go?
Like Magneto.
Oh,
For those of you who don't know, at one point Magneto actually leads the X-Men.
yes.
And so that's a really fascinating question because honestly, I'm gonna tell you the truth. I never trusted Magneto. I don't trust, and I know that goes against everything that you've been talking about. But on a fictional level, I mean,
I don't think it's just fiction. People really
No. In real life, I hope I'm better than that. In fiction, I'm comfortable with never trusting.
Well, look at real life. Look at real life. You have the prison system. How many people reform themselves and don't return to prison, as opposed to how many of them do return to prison?
Well, and that's the entire plot of Les Miserables.
Yeah. So I like how they can't be trusted. Darth Vader gets redeemed at the end of his life in Return of the Jedi. Had Darth Vader not died, I don't know if he could still, because Darth Vader was so bad, and he did such terrible things as the Sith Lord, and I don't know if you could trust him.
And then I'm the guy who just pictures him in Clone Wars, right? Crashing everything that he flies, and he's always the funny guy, right? Which is why I think the new Star Wars works so much. Is there like a 1 minute, or is it?
No, we're out of
Okay.
time.
No, we're still. We've got.
He flashed it again. That
So
resets
like
the clock. We have
4
another.
Yeah. Just keep holding the sign up, and we'll keep going.
I don't
We
think,
have 3 minutes.
I don't think there's an easy answer. There isn't an easy answer to that question, and it comes down, for you as a writer, it comes down to where you. So for writerly advice, it comes down to where you feel, because if you, and it's hard. How do you trust that guy that
Right.
killed a lot of people, and now says, my shiny teeth and me?
And you've got to be aware that there are going to be people that won't ever trust him again until the 5th or 6th book of him still being a good guy.
Yeah. So really great, the ability to write an amazing story with that, about how many people continue to believe that they still aren't better. And I'm sure if I thought Daryl in The Walking Dead, he's reformed. He is very different than he was in the opening season of that. And right, how many people would just absolutely destroy America if they killed Daryl Dixon?
Well, the show would have to shut down.
Yeah, there was a hand over here, right?
One more.
So you're talking about resolution, but you're also talking about how great it is that we're blurring the lines between
Right.
who's good and who's bad. We need to stop putting those labels. But that's kind of why we still have Gotham. You're saying your wife hates Batman because
Yes.
Gotham, but that's why, because we're not saying you're bad, you have to die, kill, over. They're still around. So how do you dovetail those two things of blurring those lines and yet still satisfying a reader's need for resolution? Or do you? Are we going away from resolution and satisfying endings?
No, because we won't stand for it as an audience. We need some sort of resolution. What kind of resolution that is has become more complicated.
Yeah.
But we need a resolution. It's one of the things. I'll try to make this really brief. The dramatic arc exists in just about everything we watch or read, including Napoleon Dynamite. There is a climax in that movie. It is such a shallow climax that it's hard to find, but it has one. And we need that. We need a climax in our stories, and how that resolves really depends on you. Gru, he's redeemed, right? He becomes the good guy, even though he's still kind of a bad guy. And we buy that. We work with that.
So I would say it's with storytelling, it depends on who you are, because with Rachel, she will write and write and write, and it's tempting to say like, oh, the end is known from the beginning, but a lot of times we have had to live our life. So we've been on tour now for 14 months, and she literally had a very hard time dealing with Shadow World until we had been on the road for long enough, and all of a sudden, then she got it. Now you can write what you know, right? And she was able to finish the book, and now we're at a different phase. Dream World is being written kind of in real time. So for you, you have to decide, do you want a redemption story? Are you okay that things didn't turn out the way that,
Sometimes the bad guy can win. That is a resolution.
Can and does.
Yes.
In real life, we've seen horrible atrocities in the world. To me, my solution is, why would you ever write a single book out of a series, right? You need to give yourself time as a storyteller to tell the story. And I think you artificially put boxes on things or categories on things or try to tie things up that aren't, if you'll just, right, is there more to the story? And so to me, if it doesn't feel right, if it feels really uncomfortable when you're trying to wrap something up, it's possible because the story is not over.
And we are out
All right.
of time.
Parting shots.
Go see Deadpool.
Maybe.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.